Hello and welcome to another National Road Safety Partnership Program webinar, NRSP's SunSmart, why it's important to think about sun protection on the road. My name is Jerome Carslake and I manage the NRSP and its many activities. There's me. So to find out more, check out the NRSP website and you'll be able to stay abreast of everything we have upcoming. So today's session, it's going to go for approximately 60 minutes. We've got plenty of time for discussion throughout. We'll be recording the session and it'll be shared on the NRSP website along with PowerPoints. Also just want to point out that we've had some sound issues with a few people in the past. So we're looking at trying to resolve those issues. And we're going to sit there and shoot out and include that as part of our survey at the end with a specific question around it. And we'd like to know whether you've had any issues at all so we can try and resolve it. We'd like to make our webinars as interactive as possible as well. So for those first-time users, please go through, enter your questions in here, type them into the box, and we'll be able to feed them in through our webinar as it goes along. So we are very, very lucky today to have Caoimhe joining us. Welcome, Caoimhe.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And it's an absolute pleasure. So before we dive into this, though, you want to know a little bit about who we have in the audience. Isn't that correct?
Yes, please.
All right. Let me just bring this up. We've got a bit of a poll we're going to be putting out to everyone. Our first poll is just to find out who we have listening on board. So if you can just take the time quickly to tick the box where you're sort of sitting and let us know where you're sitting, I guess, in the ladder. And this way we get a bit of help into helping guide what we're going to be talking about. Would that be correct?
Yes, please. Yep.
Excellent. All right. We'll take that as taken. So we're going to share this with everyone now. Let me just work out how to do this. Where's my order? Launch, close. There we go. And now we're going to share. So this is everyone we have online. Thank you very much. That's our banner. You happy with that?
Yep.
Beautiful. I'm now going to hide that one. And we have one last one we're going to throw out to you all. Here we go. Where is your key area?
Where?
I'm being SunSmart. So for me, I'm all the above myself, if I'm out and about. And now let's go have a look at our poll so we have a bit of an idea who we're going. So I'm just closing that off. We'll share it with everyone again. Look at that. That's a nice balance. Everyone drives, pretty much.
Okay.
Few road workers, organisational duty of care. So once again, I think we've got a good balance here today. So I think we're going to have a fantastic session. All right. Over to you.
Okay, so yes, my name is Caoimhe Geraghty. I am from SunSmart at Cancer Council Victoria. I am their workplace and community coordinator. So my job is to try and spread the word about how to be SunSmart at work and in your day-to-day life. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about what UV is and how it's impacting on our health. And then give you some tips about how to stay safe when you're driving or outdoors or exposed to UV. And then we'll talk a little bit about skin cancer itself, the different types of skin cancer, and how to check your skin for skin cancer. Love to get questions as we go along, but hopefully you'll come away today with some new information about how UV works and what to do about it and to stay safe.
And even in our discussions, I've already learned a lot, stuff which I thought I knew, and I've failed over my lifetime this far, and I'll be changing that.
Very good. I've got one convert. Good. So I'm going to kick off with a little quiz. No need to type in the answers, but see what you make of these guys and what they might have in common. So we've got Hamish Blake there, our TV and radio personality. We've got Michael Clarke, the cricketer. We've got Jared Roughhead, former AFL player. And then we have Hugh Jackman, actor. And then finally, my fellow Irishman, Jim Stynes. What do you reckon, Jerome? What do you think they all might have in common?
They can all grow better beards than I can.
That's true.
I don't know. We reckon some form of skin cancer, perhaps?
Yes, they've all had skin cancer. So both Hamish Blake and Hugh Jackman have gone on their social media talking about some little skin lesions that they've had out that were skin cancers, prompting or asking people to be vigilant and check their skin and get them go to the doctor if they see anything. Also, Michael Clarke has been a ambassador for SunSmart and Cancer Council because he's had several things cut out. And then Jared Ruffhead famously a few years back had a reoccurrence of melanoma on his lip. And then we had Jim Stynes. So Jim Stynes came to Australia when he was 18 to play AFL, and he was at home one day. His wife noticed a dodgy looking spot on his lower back and said, "Ooh, Jim, don't like the look of that. You have to get that checked out." And he goes, "Oh, I'll be fine.
He's man tough.
She'd be right." And then he did nothing. 6 months later, he took his shirt off at the beach. Two Aussie mates of his saw that same spot and said, "Yo, that's not good. You got to get that checked." He waited another week. Popped into a doctor's surgery of a friend he knew, and the doctor said, "We're cutting that out tomorrow. That is not good. We don't like the look of that." So unfortunately, it was a melanoma. He had left it too late to get it looked at, and he spent the next few years of his life trying to get that treated, and unfortunately that was not successful, and we lost him to skin cancer a few years back. So I think a lot of people know he died of cancer, but might not realize that it was a skin cancer that actually caused his passing. So
that's a pretty tough one. So if you'd actually listened at the very beginning, that could have been a whole different story.
Absolutely. It's all about catching it early. So you need to be vigilant about checking your skin. If you notice anything, get to that GP and get your peace of mind that it's been nothing to worry about, or that it is been treated and you don't have to think about it again. So don't let it spread. Get onto it early. So the other thing that we can take from these guys is that they are all men. Unfortunately, skin cancer is more common in men. So it's more common that men will get skin cancer, and also more common that they die of skin cancer. So men less likely to check their skin, less likely to go and see a doctor if they do see something, and they're also more likely to be outdoor workers, so they get exposed to a lot more, so that increases their risk as well.
So it's nothing to do with the difference between a male and female at all?
Well, we suspect there might be some hormonal factors there as well. Men get a different type of melanoma than women do, or more likely to get a different type, but the research is still quite early on that. So watch this space.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
We'll come back to you on that.
Yeah. So the sad fact is that 2 in 3 Australians will get a skin cancer by the time that they're 70. But the good news is that skin cancer is one of those cancers that's really preventable. 95% of skin cancers can be prevented. Only 5% are due to family factors. So if you do the right things, you are reducing your risk hugely. It's one of those ones we can actually have an impact on. And as I say, if it's caught early and treated early, it's also really successful in treatment, which is great news. So thought I'd talk a little bit about UV because it's a kind of a confusing topic for a lot of people. So UV is ultraviolet radiation that comes from the sun. And it is what causes skin cancer. And it's not something that you can see, and it's not something that you can feel. So it doesn't depend on how hot the day is, which raises a lot of eyebrows. So you can get a 19-degree day like we have here in Melbourne, and it can be 30 degrees the next day, and the UV would be pretty much the same because of the time of year and the time of day. So people find it difficult to wrap their head around the fact that we can't see UV and we can't feel it. So one way to think about it is to think about it like an X-ray. So an X-ray is another type of radiation. We can't see that X-ray, we can't feel that X-ray, but we know that we can get the scan of that X-ray, and also that the dentist or the doctor or whatever radiographer you've gone to for that X-ray, they stand behind a screen because they know if they get too much exposure to that X-ray that they can develop a cancer. So it's the same with UV. So hopefully that helps get your head wrapped around it.
It's posing some good analogies for me about it all.
Good. So we measure UV in what we call an index. It's basically just, low to extreme. And as we move throughout the day and move throughout the seasons, those rates will get higher and higher. So we'll reach our highest UV rate in late December, and it will be lowest in winter. So we move up and down through the seasons. In early morning and late evening, you'd get into those yellow or those green 1s and 2s in the low, and then as you head towards the middle of the day, that's when the highest UV for that day will be seen. So to understand UV, we need to think about where the sun is in the sky in relation to us. So the most UV and the most sun is along that equator, which is that thick white line there in the middle. And it's running through Indonesia, through the middle of Africa there, and the top of South America. So that's where the most UV in the world is at any time.
But there's no, so the ozone hole, does that?
So the ozone hole is over Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
It is not over Australia or New Zealand. So it doesn't affect our UV.
Okay.
Yeah. So
we're going to be having some myth busting coming on.
That's another one we should add to the list. So if you were under that ozone hole in Antarctica, yeah, that's gonna not be filtering out as much UV, but it doesn't impact our UV levels here in Australia. Yeah. So what does impact is actually how close we are to the equator. So if you see there, we are quite close to that white line. And let's compare that to Europe, where I think a lot of Australians might come from. Europe there in the yellow is quite far from the equator. So let's overlay this map with UV levels. So you can see Australia is very firmly in the dark orange there, whereas almost all of Europe is in very light orange or white. So as you move out from the equator, the amount of UV gets less, and the amount of risk of skin cancer would also get less. But let's think about who lives along that equator line. So you get a lot of people who have naturally very dark skin.
Evolution.
Yes, exactly. Well done. So you have people who are designed to be able to withstand a lot of UV living along that equator. And as you get further out, they need to absorb more vitamin D, so their skin gets lighter. So you've got a lot of light-skinned people in Europe where they don't get a lot of sun, they don't get a lot of UV. So unfortunately, what we've done in our wisdom is people like me have moved over from Northern Europe, where we get very little sun, and we've designed and evolved to match that weather, and we've plonked ourselves in the middle of a very high UV country, which is Australia. So that has resulted in Australia having the highest rates of skin cancer in the world. Can you guess where number 2 might be?
New Zealand?
Yes, you're right.
Oh,
well done.
There we go.
So Australia and New Zealand pit it out or fight it out for the number 1 spot every few years, and we've just pipped them at the post there again a couple of years ago. So yes, you have the same situation in New Zealand, a country that has quite a high level of UV close to the equator, and a lot of people that have come over from Europe that aren't equipped to deal with that amount of UV. So rates of UV are highest in countries that have a lot of European migration, such as Australia and New Zealand, Europe itself, and then North America, South America, and South Africa. So that's not to say that people of other skin types don't get skin cancer, but it's most likely in those who have pale skin with a lot of UV. So just because you tan doesn't make that you without risk, but it does give you a little bit of sun protection. So if we think about skin color in terms of an SPF and how much protection you get from a sunscreen or whatever, a person with very, very dark skin has an SPF of about 13.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's not a huge SPF when we were slapping on 30 and 50, but it's a little bit, it's enough, but they can still damage their skin, they can still get skin cancer. So Bob Marley, for instance, died of skin cancer. There you go.
Add him to your list next time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the UV, it's all about where the sun is in the sky. So let's look at what an average June UV level would look like in Australia. You see down south we have the green, so it's quite low. We're doing well. And then as you get closer to the equator, as you go north, that average UV gets higher as we go north. And then let's look at the average January. And I usually get a few gasps for there.
Wow. That's a big change,
yeah.
Isn't it?
So everywhere except Tassie is in the extreme range on average in January. So there's no escaping it really. We everywhere needs to be thinking about sun protection in Australia. So we think about UV in terms of the risk you are putting yourself under on a day-to-day basis, but also, unfortunately, with UV and UV damage, it's an accumulative risk. So if you think about a bucket of water filling, the more exposure you're getting, the more that bucket of water is filling up, and if it overflows, then it might mean a skin cancer. So if you have had a lot of exposure when you were young, I get told horror stories of people, you know, being told to play outdoors and get a nice burn so you're set up for the summer. Even if you were one of those people, you might have filled your bucket by half. You still have an opportunity at any stage in your life to prevent the rest of that bucket filling. So there's always an opportunity to try and limit the amount of exposure you get and the risk of getting skin cancer.
That's good news.
So when I talk about UV and heat and that they're not connected, I like to show this little graph here. So we have the temperature represented in that orange line, and for this example, it builds throughout the day. It reaches its peak about 3 p.m. It plateaus for about a few hours, and then it drops off later in the day about 7 p.m. Whereas the UV, because it's all about where the sun is in the sky, and the sun is in the sky at the highest in the middle of the day, then the UV is always going to be highest in the middle of the day. So we have that bell-shaped curve, we call it, where it climbs to its peak around 1 o'clock in this example, and then goes down, and it's below that 3 level when it's a bit safer, about 5 p.m. So if you were looking to be outdoors in a time of low UV, you're going to get it lowest in the start of the day and the end of the day. What's interesting though is the UV has dropped down from its peak of 9 on this example, and then by 5 o'clock it's gone down into the UV of 3, 2, and 1, but the heat is still high. So that's the time to be going to the beach and stripping off, is when the UV is low and the heat is still high.
Send the kids outside that stage.
That's exactly when the time is to enjoy the heat. So another way of looking at it is if we just look at these UV ratings and temperatures of a week in Melbourne. So we have 28th of January, it was 38 degrees, and then a couple of days later it was down to 21, and then 22, and then 32. But if you look at the UV index, you can see the UV is quite stable. So it's no different really from a UV point of view when it's 38 degrees and a couple of days later it's 21 degrees. If anything, it's actually slightly higher on the colder day. So just like the weather, it'll vary a little bit, but really it's quite stable.
And on the colder day, is it because there's cloud cover, or?
It could be cloud cover, yeah, cloud cover. So clouds are tricky. We can't rely on clouds to be our friend. So the white fluffy clouds are actually a reflective surface and can increase the amount of UV around. But if it's a thick, rainy cloud, it'll filter out a bit of that UV, but don't rely on it. It's not going to be as good as putting on a hat and long sleeves and all that. So I talked about clouds a second ago. Other things that we need to think about in terms of UV is the reflective surfaces that might be around you. So we get UV directly from the sun, but then it bounces off various surfaces and it can affect how much UV we're getting. So reflective surfaces are things like snow, concrete, white paint, water, sand. So if you think about any surfaces that are in your workspace that you have to, you know, shield your eyes from because they're kind of glary, they're also really effective at reflecting UV.
So black tarmac, would that be a problem, or does that absorb it?
The tarmac will be a little bit reflective, yet. It's not too bad because it's darker in color. So concrete would be much worse, or white paint would be much worse. So, but the fact that it's flat and hard makes it reflective. So white colored or light colored, flat and hard surfaces, very reflective. But surfaces that are more dark in color or rougher, in texture, and also natural fibers are less reflective. So soil and bark and grass are quite poor reflectors of UV, and that's where you'd be safer.
Okay.
Yeah. But also think about if you are in the shade, you need to think about the reflective surfaces around you anyway. So I've said some scary things there. How do we know what's going on with the UV on a day-to-day basis? Well, one thing you can do is download the SunSmart app. It's free to download, and you can get the UV for your area in 600 locations across Australia. So that's great. So it tells you when the sun protection times are, and that is when UV is 3 or above. So in this example, it tells you that at 10 past 10 to 4:40, the UV is going to be above 3, and that's when sun protection is required. I will put a caveat to that though. If you are working outdoors, because of the way the damage from UV accumulates, you need to think about protecting yourself even at the lower levels, because that bucket of water is still filling even at the lower levels of UV.
So do a lot of organisations, do you think, actually have these SunSmart apps and give the alerts to their workers while they're out and about?
Yeah, a lot of workplaces also have the SunSmart widget, which is the same thing on their websites as well. So they can keep an eye on what the UV is doing and maybe rotate their workers out of the midday sun when they know the UV is going to be at its highest. So it's a nice little tool to be able to see what's going on with the UV and how you might want to structure your day.
Okay.
It also has a forecast there, so you can check what is going to be UV rating for the next few days, and also has a sunscreen calculator and a few other nice little little tools on there to make it easy to be sun protective. So I did a little look on the map or on the app earlier to see what was going on with the UV around the country. So in Sydney, we have a UV of 10 today, which is pretty high. Perth's UV of 12, Hobart of 9, Brisbane of 12, and then I forgot to check Melbourne, which is where we are right now. But I think that was getting to a UV of about 10 as well. So check the app. It's nice. Oh, it's getting to 11. Actually, 11 today in Melbourne. Well, bad. It's extreme.
Oh, yes. But we're aware of it now. I guess the other part is it's probably the first time Melbourne's reasonably consistent with something to do with the weather, I guess.
That's true. Always a bright side. Well done. So this might be a good opportunity for questions if anyone had any.
Fire them through, and we'll tie on a few myths here as well. So, question for you: sun cream. What happens if it gets hot? Does that matter?
It does matter. It depends how hot you're talking though. So if it's 30 degrees or higher, it's going to start to denature and separate, and you don't want to use sunscreen that's been in 30 degrees or higher for too long, because it starts losing its effectiveness. So yeah, if you've got some sunscreen in the cupboard that's been there, 3, 4, or 5 years, it's separated, and you just, I'll just give it a shake and it'll be fine. Unfortunately not, no.
Oh, so I visualize growing up on the farm when I used to put it on, you feel burning hot in your hands and you're just rubbing into your skin going, so that was a bit of a fail, was it?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Jeez, there goes years of life like that one. Now, another myth for it, another question. So areas of your body that don't get exposed to sun very often, and then something you do you actually get more sun from parts of your skin, or is it all the same?
Do you get more exposure?
Does your skin absorb more? Or is it all the same all over?
If you get a tan, that's your body's way of trying to protect you from the sun. And it's equivalent to about an SPF of 3 or 4. So it's a very ineffective way of trying to protect you. So if you've got a bit of a color on some part of your body, it might give you a tiny bit of protection than somewhere that's never seen the sun, that's very pale. But I wouldn't approach sun protection like that. You need to cover your skin because you're getting exposure regardless of where you're getting it.
Well, see, for me, it's the top of the head.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
An area as unfortunately as my hair relocates to elsewhere on my back, I think it is. And as a result, sun comes on there and geez, it feels more sensitive to the rest of my body. Is there a reason why? Or is it just because it's never had that much sun?
I'm not sure. It might be sensitive skin that you have there, or it's gotten a lot of damage over the years and it doesn't like it. I don't know.
There's my bucket full, maybe on the top of the head.
Maybe.
Excellent. Well, let's move on then, shall we?
Yep. So I have a little quiz for people. So normally when I do this in front of an audience, I get them all to stand up. So I can't tell if you're going to stand or not, but have a little think of
We'll put our arms up.
okay,
Virtual arm up.
put your virtual arm up. Have a little think about whether any of these statements are true to you, and if they are, then I'm afraid you've got a bit of skin cancer risk. So, you or any of your family members have had any form of skin cancer? You may put your virtual arm down if that is true.
I survived that one.
Oh, good job. Okay. You have lots of moles or freckles.
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Okay. You have red or blonde hair, or had.
I'll lower my hand. Thank you for that one.
Okay. You have ever had a severe or blistering sunburn?
I definitely go for that one as well.
Yep, that's a key risk factor. You use or have ever used a solarium?
Nope.
Good job. You've ever sunbathed? You
Yep.
don't use sun protection?
I use sun protection, yes.
Good. You grew up in Australia?
Definitely.
Yep. You work outdoors?
I have, yes.
You spend a lot of your free time outdoors?
Yes, rowing,
Right.
swimming. Geez, quite
Yeah.
a few fails on my behalf.
Well, I'd be in there too. I'd have sat down by the first question. So
What about the
um,
audience?
yeah, I wonder how you guys did. I'm sure there's quite a few people who have ticked several of those boxes. So think about them in terms of your risk of developing skin cancer. And if you've said yes to any of those, I'm afraid you're in the more at risk category.
Bummer.
So these messages are for you and and for your team. So you ready for some scary photos then?
Far away. Well,
Yep.
could be worse than the lady we saw earlier. Oh, yes,
Well,
it is. Look at that.
Let's see. So we have some different types of UV damage that I'd like to share with you. So let's start maybe with my red looking friend there in the bottom left. So she has a very severe sunburn. I like to think of her as an Irish backpacker maybe, who's come to Australia and doesn't know how to behave in the sun.
Well, going into Scarborough Beach, you regularly see the
Right.
backpackers arrive, and you just go, oh, you're going to be sore tonight.
Yep. And she's probably going to peel. So when we peel, that's the body's way of going, nah, can't
Fail.
heal this, gotta get rid of this skin. So let's just give up now. Sunburn, not a good idea. Really, really best to prevent that if you can. It's bad damage to our skin. And by the way, a tan is also a form of damage. So love the skin you're in and the color you got, because that's what you're designed for. And then we have also on the bottom row, we have an eye there, and there's a bit of clouding over of that eye. What do you reckon's going on?
Cataract?
Yes, it is a cataract. So cataracts is a normal part of aging, but UV can increase the or make it come on younger, basically. Protect your eyes, but also you can get skin cancer of the eye itself. And also the delicate skin around the eye. So really important to.
So it's a high risk area.
It is a high risk area.
And are all sunglasses the same?
If you buy them in Australia and they have good sun protection written on them, then you are good to go. Category 3 or 4 is great. If you buy fashion spectacles that might be red or purple in color and come from a teenager's shop, they are not doing you any good at all. Also, if you go to a stall on a Bali beach and pick up a pair of Ray-Bans for $1, they
Wow.
also are not going to be doing any good. In fact, they might be tricking the eye into thinking that it's nighttime and the eye opens wider, allowing more UV in and more damage to occur.
So you're telling me they're not legit Ray-Bans?
I can't verify or deny. But if you don't buy them in Australia, where we have very high standards, you cannot guarantee that they are protecting your eyes. And then we have what might be very interesting to this audience is the man here on the top left. So he has a severe wrinkling to one side of his face. What do you reckon's going on there?
Selective Botox. He was a
Probably.
trial. No?
What do you reckon he did for a living?
I would say a truck driver.
He was a truck driver in the US. Yep. So he had UV coming in through his side window for about 15 years, and that has
Wow.
caused his wrinkling on one side of his face. So if there's anyone there who wants to prevent wrinkles, UV protection is a great way of doing that. I heard a dermatologist say that if we all lived in caves and never saw the sun, which I am not recommending, we would not see a wrinkle until we were about 60. That's not the case in Australia.
No, well, that's one way you can always identify an Aussie tourist before they open their mouth. You just look and you see the wrinkles on the side of their eyes you'll see them out and you go, Aussie.
Aussie, unfortunately. So, UV, it's not the only cause of wrinkles. So pollutants and smoking can also cause wrinkles, but it's by far
Wow.
the biggest cause. And then we have a very, very large scar in the middle of this woman's back. So this is Rebecca. She is 22 at the time.
22?
Yep. She had a melanoma on the back of her neck, and it came back 1 year later, and actually there was 2 in the same spot. And they felt that because they had to remove so much skin, that it was too much area for a skin cancer, or for a skin graft rather. And so they opened up her back and pulled that skin over that area that they had cut out, and she is left with a scar today and has to be very vigilant about making sure that it doesn't come back. And up until recently, she was a SunSmart educator and used to go around to workplaces talking about her story and how she wished she'd worn that daggy hat at school that would have protected the back of her neck. So poor thing.
Wow.
Yep. And then we have a man there, elderly man in the top right, and he has a lot of damage to his skin. So a lot of wrinkling, a lot of dry patches, a lot of sunspots, or solar keratosis. So a lot of damage. I don't know if he wore a shirt in his life, but that is damage he has accumulated over his lifetime. It's not new damage. But as we age, our skin gets thinner. Any damage that we got from our younger years comes to the surface of the skin and can be seen. So keep your skin nice and youthful by protecting it from the sun. Yep. And then we have several different types of skin cancer. So we'll go into skin cancer later if we still have time. But I guess the thing to point out here is that skin cancers can come in lots of different shapes and sizes and colors. So some are that typical mole that starts to go a bit odd colored or shaped. Some of them are white and scaly. Some of them are, an existing spot, or some of them are new spots. They might start to bleed and not heal. So just look out for lesions on your skin that change, or are not behaving like other ones on your skin, or look a bit different than the other
Awesome.
spots on your skin. Okay. So I mentioned recently, or a moment ago, the different types of skin. So if you have darker skin that's more likely to tan, you have a bit more natural protection in your skin, but that doesn't exempt you, unfortunately, from damage from UV. It's like a sliding scale of risk. So the lighter your skin, the more you're likely to burn, the more pale and freckly you are. That good Celtic skin, perhaps, the higher your risk of skin cancer. But even those who have very dark skin have also can get skin cancer, although it's less. But we find that it's actually people who burn easily are much more vigilant about being in the sun because they know that they're high risk. It's those who get a tan that are a bit more blasé about things and think, oh, I'm fine, I've got, darker skin, or I tan, or I've got dark eyes, or whatever, I don't need to worry. And they can sometimes be the ones that get caught out. So please don't exempt yourself from risk just because you're a little bit darker skinned. You can still get that skin cancer.
Everyone give it a go.
Okay. Shall I move on to?
Most certainly.
Yeah. So UV is a health and safety issue. So UV is considered a hazard in the workplace. It's something that you need to be taken seriously by your employer. Taken seriously includes having a policy to protect the worker when they're out in UV, whether that's driving the car or fixing the road, or if you're a cafe owner and you have people serving coffee outdoors, that is still exposing them to UV. So they should have a policy of how they're going to address that hazard at work and reduce the risk. They should also be providing workers with the PPE, or the ways of protecting themselves: the long sleeves, long pants, hats, sunglasses, and shade. And they should be trying to reduce the amount of exposure that they get, if they can, in terms of when they're exposed. So if it's in the middle of the day, that's when the UV is highest. Can they rework their schedule so the outdoor work is, earlier in the day or later in the day?
So you can have like a siesta in the middle of the day sort of thing.
That'd be good.
I know.
Sounds great. So I'm most familiar with the Victorian situation. So in 2004, a man who worked for Boral Bricks sought to sue his employer because of a lot of skin cancers that he had on his body. And he said from driving the truck and from delivering those bricks, he had been exposed to a lot of UV. He was never told to put a shirt on. He was never given long sleeve top to wear or sunscreen to put on or a hat or sunglasses. And he thought that the damage he received while he was at work was negligence from his employer. And the judge agreed and gave him permission to sue his employer. And since then, UV has been considered a hazard in the workplace.
So how does an organisation measure whether policy is being applied by its workers, do you think?
I guess you just have to be vigilant. You can track the number of burns that are being reported. If they are, you need to get your health and safety officers watching out for people, rolling up their sleeves or wearing shorts instead of long pants, or, you need to have someone making sure that policy is implementable, and revised on a regular basis. You need to involve your staff and employees in picking that, hat so that they are likely to wear it, or trying to find materials that are, and loose fitting so that they're much more comfortable to wear in the heat if it does get hot, that they're providing them with breaks if it does get hot, so that they're more likely to keep those long sleeves and long pants on. So just like these lions, it's a good idea to reduce the amount of time that you spend in the sun. So that will help reduce that bucket filling with water and that risk accumulating. So limiting the outdoor work if you can in the middle of the day when the UV is highest. Check the app to see when that is. Or if you are driving and the window is tinted, make sure you put up roll up that window rather than having the windows down. So just like our friend here with the wrinkling on one side of his face, I suspect he probably didn't have UV film on the side of the truck windows. So interesting to know is that a windscreen of a vehicle will protect about 70 or 80% of that UV from getting to you, but side windows of the vehicle will only protect about 20%. So a nice way of reducing the amount of UV for your drivers is getting that UV film. It doesn't have to be tint. It doesn't have to have a color in it, but you could get UV film or those stick-on shades for side windows to reduce the exposure to UV when driving.
So are you surprised the vehicles don't have standard sort of UV protection on their windows?
It's just such an easy fix. It's crazy that not everyone has that. So
because we refer in road safety around the safe vehicles as a key element of the system. So
okay.
I'm quite stunned. I don't think this quite extends. No one's really thought about it that way.
Yeah. And the fact that there's such a big difference between the front windscreen and the side windows, it's an easy way of reducing your exposure, but then you have to remember to keep your windows up and have that aircon on. So
and what about machinery as well, the broader sense? So if you think of, because I spent years driving a harvester on the farm,
right,
and then you got the sun reflecting off the comb and coming in from all sort of angles. Is it just the windscreens on cars, or do you think it's all machineries like that? You've got to check.
I would imagine that it's it's going to be the windscreen on any type of vehicle. Yeah. So. Check with the manufacturer, maybe.
That's good.
Yeah. So I'm going to hop on to different types of sun protection, unless you wanted to have a questions.
No, I've got a good question one coming up. I'll save it for the clothing section.
Excellent. Well, we're just about to jump into that.
Oh, there we go.
There we are. So one of the best ways of reducing the amount of UV if you have to be outdoors is with covering clothing. So it's about covering as much skin as possible and staying cool in the heat so it's bearable for you. So we're talking long sleeves, roll down, and we're talking long pants. And try and find fabrics if you can that are breathable and loose so that you can stay cool in the heat. So the best way of ensuring that clothing is protecting you from the UV is to get clothing that has been tested for having ultraviolet protection factor, or UPF, in there. If it hasn't been tested or doesn't have a tag on it, it really should if you're buying workplace stuff. But if it hasn't, think about trying fabric that is has a nice tight weave to it. So if it has a loose weave, like linen or something like that, not that you'd probably wear that in the workplace, but it's going to let the UV through those gaps in the fabric. So you want a nice tight weave that if you hold it up to the light, it doesn't let the light through. And that's your rule of thumb for finding fabrics that are going to protect you from the UV.
So casual Fridays, safari suits out.
Oh, it depends on the fabric.
So we've got a question here from Mick. We are looking at new police summer motorcycle jackets. The manufacturer can supply them with or without a collar. Based on this presentation, I take it we should prioritise UV protection over the perceived greater comfort of no collar.
Yeah, collar is definitely a good one because you can get a lot of damage to the back of your neck. And if you have a collar, you're protecting the back of your neck. So yeah, plenty of skin cancers of the neck. So that's another thing I should have mentioned, is that getting a shirt with a collar is really important. So yes, please.
Excellent.
Okay. So next on our forms of sun protection, we have hats. So hat should be nice and broad, shade the full face, neck and ears. So we have this nice picture here that illustrates it pretty well. If you've got a baseball cap, you might be protecting the top of your head. It might be protecting the top half of your face, but it's not protecting the lower part of your face, it's not protecting your ears, and it's not protecting your neck. So really it's a poor excuse for a hat in my opinion, and it's not PPE. It doesn't pass as protective enough. You need to get a nice broad brim hat or a bucket hat that comes down nice and low, or one of those sexy Legionnaires style hats to protect the full head.
So if a workplace is supplying them, it's a fail.
Yep, bow from SunSmart. Yep, please avoid the baseball cap. Sunglasses. So I mentioned that we can get skin cancer of the eye and also of the delicate area around the eye. So we want sunglasses or sun protective, eyewear that is wraparound in style, so it doesn't allow the UV to get in around the sides. It should meet the Australian standard. And it should be worn all year round. If you are wearing protective goggles, they can have UV, or protective eyewear, it can have UV protection in them without having the shade part of them, so they can be clear, and they would be marked O for outdoor use. So the color of the lens is not as important as the category of the lens itself. So we're looking for good sun protection, which would be 3 or 4 for sunglasses, or marked with O for outdoor use if they're sun protective eyewear.
And is that actually on the sunglasses?
It should be on the label. Some sunglasses will have it printed on the arm of the sunglasses itself.
So for an organisation, they should probably check that off. Is that correct?
Yep, definitely. So they don't have to be expensive. We recently got some in Bunnings for, I think it was $7 for some clear eyewear that were protective of UV.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, look for it meeting the Australian standard and wear them all year round. Nice, close to the skin. Shade. So shade is an excellent way of protecting UV. It cuts down the amount of UV by about half. It's really effective, but because of that reflection, we need to think about wearing some protection even in the shade. So you see our friends here have their long sleeve shirts with a collar. They've got their long pants and they've got their hat and their sunnies. So shade, great, can be from existing shade from a building or from trees in the area if you're outdoors, or it can be portable shade, just like these guys have here. Pop that up for when you're taking a break or whatever if you're working on the roads, so you're cutting down your UV, and also cuts down on the heat as well. And then finally, sunscreen. So this is the one people love the most. They're quite happy to apply sunscreen, but sunscreen should only be used for the parts of the body that can't be covered up another way. So if you are wearing your long pants and your long sleeve top and you had your hat on, you should only need your sunscreen for your hands and your face. So we are looking for sunscreen that's water resistant, broad spectrum, which protects UVA and UVB, and SPF of 30 or higher. So quick fact, do you know the difference between an SPF of 30 and 50?
Is it 20% better? I can't be
It's
sure.
not. It's, yeah, I wasn't good at factors either in school, but
Busted.
yeah, I know. So there is very little difference. So it's only about a 1.6% difference. Yeah. So it's about, so an SPF of 30 is 1 part in 30 of the UV will get through, and an SPF of 50, 1 part in 50, so 98% will get through.
So, but it comes with a far larger price tag as well.
Well, this is it. It can be more expensive. So it's about finding the sunscreen that you like the feel of. It can be a 30 or a 50, doesn't really matter, but I wouldn't go below that. But what's really important is applying enough. So that 30 ml bottle, or that, sorry, 110 ml bottle that guy is holding in his hand, that is 3 full body applications. So it's a teaspoon per limb we're going for. If we go 1 arm, 2 arms, 2 legs, front of torso, back of torso, and head, that's 7 teaspoons. So you'd get 3 of that out of that 1 small tube. So it's a lot less than people think, or a lot more rather than people think.
And does the quality of sun cream vary much?
Not really in Australia. It's considered a medicine in Australia. So it is regulated by the Therapeutics Goods Administration, and we have very high standards here. So it's pretty good if you buy it in Australia. You can get it from Aldi or from Coles or from Woolies if you want. The reason prices vary is because of the way it feels or smells, or dry touch going on the skin can feel nicer than a more goopy one. It depending on your budget, think about what you're looking for from your sunscreen, and if you just want it to protect you, then any old brown will do, as long as it has those 3 things.
And age doesn't matter of it either?
Oh, well, yes, that is a factor. So sunscreen will only last about 2 or 3 years. So you need to make sure you're checking that best before date that will be written on the bottle. If it's separated, forget it. Throw it away. It's not doing you any good. It needs to be reapplied every 2 hours, even though the bottle might say every 4 hours. It's every 2 hours. It says 4 hours water resistant on the bottle. Not so that's about sitting in a bath of water for 4 hours rather than living your life and sweating and rubbing your skin. And
so if I'm a heavy sweater, I'm seeing it's just pouring off me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter?
It does. You need to reapply it more. Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah,
There's another fail.
Yeah.
My arm comes down again.
And storage is important as well. It should be stored below 30 degrees, or it'll start to denature and separate, and that's no good either.
So it makes it useless?
It does, I'm afraid. Yep. So throw away all that old sunscreen that is sitting in your cupboard for years.
So even if, so you think about a tub, those big pump packs just sitting at the back of the ute, exposed to heat, and then you're just loading it up.
Well,
and it's like, and I'm putting it on, it's the most hot while I'm putting it on.
Yeah.
That's a fail.
It's a bit dodgy. It's hard to know. You'd have to test the sunscreen itself, but keep it in the car where it can get very, very hot, not great. Keep it with your lunch, maybe in an esky or a cooler bag or something. That will keep it a bit more safe, or use a smaller bottle that you're replacing regularly, or top up a small bottle from that big pump pack. But yeah, you need to be safe.
And there's a question that came through saying, what about babies? They say don't put it on under the age of 6 months.
That's right. So when babies are born, they've very, very sensitive skin, and they can't tolerate the ingredients in the sunscreen. So it's best to avoid the direct sun with babies. Cover them up.
The shade.
Yeah, go into the shade. And then if you really need to apply sunscreen, only apply it to the areas that you can't cover, like I was saying, to their hands or their face. But yeah, best avoided for the first 6 months if you can, or get the very sensitive or kid-friendly ones. So I'm conscious of time, so I might skip through. Just remember to put your sunscreen on the lips, but you might want to go with the lip balm because you get nasty skin cancers off the lips, and people
What about
often
zinc?
forget. Yeah, so zinc is what we call a physical blocker, and it just makes the UV bounce off the skin, whereas the other type of sunscreen, it actually absorbs the UV, so it doesn't get into the body in the first place. So they just work differently. Both are effective. Use whatever you like.
Okay, great.
Have we any other questions that people want to ask now?
Well,
No.
how old is she, by the way?
She's in her 40s. They call her the leather skin lady. She's a big fan of solariums and likes her suntan. But I don't think it's paying off, to be honest.
Reminds you a bit like a sausage that's been overcooked.
Yeah, or a leather handbag.
Yes, a leather handbag. Wow.
Yeah, not pretty.
No, we'll keep bouncing on.
Yep. So just briefly to go through the different types of skin cancer. If you want to learn more, you can go onto the SunSmart website and we have them all outlined there. But this is a basal cell carcinoma, extremely common in Australia. They are found in parts of the body that are most exposed to the sun, so your face, your arms, your neck, your ears, and they're very, very treatable, very, very common, but they do need to be addressed or it can ulcerate. So best to get that looked at and checked out. So they can be small, round, or flattened in shape and kind of scaly patches. They can be red, pale, or pearly in color, and they rarely spread to other parts of the body. So they're rarely life-threatening, but still get them checked out. Then we have our squamous cell carcinoma, and just yeah, pretty one. So basal cell and squamous cell are just referring to the different layers of skin where they appear on. So it sounds a bit scientific, but don't worry too much about the term. So SCC, or squamous cell carcinoma, they're a bit more threatening than the basal cell. Very common in those who work outdoors. Very, very common in the construction industry, and again appear on parts of the body that have been exposed to a lot of sun. They can spread to other parts of the body and are responsible for a third of skin cancer deaths. So
picked up early?
Yeah, you need to get that one. And then
is that something also that comes up later in life more as well?
Yeah, so again, with that cumulative nature of sun damage, the more you have accumulated over time, the more likely you've filled that bucket to where skin cancer is going to come up. And then we have melanoma, which is the one that a lot of people know about. It's responsible for only about 4 or 5% of skin cancers, but it's the most dangerous because it spreads to other parts of the body. So one thing to know about melanoma is that it can appear anywhere on the body. It doesn't have to be in a place where it has been exposed to the sun. So you need to be checking all of your skin, and that includes genitals, that includes between your toes, under the nail bed, underneath your feet, under your arm. Anywhere there's skin, you can get a melanoma. So if you notice anything, and you think, oh, it couldn't be a melanoma because it's appeared somewhere I don't have any sun exposure. Unfortunately, it spreads. So
beware.
Please get that checked. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So sometimes melanomas can follow a pattern which is they're asymmetrical, so different from one side to the other. They can have a defined border around them, have some color variation in them. So this one has like dark brown, mid brown, and then paler skin color, and they can be diameter of 6 millimeters. And that's not to say if they don't follow some of these that there might not be a risk. A GP will look for whether it has 1 or 2 of these, and that might be enough to be concerning. And then another type of melanoma that I just want to do a shout out is the nodular melanoma. It looks a bit like a blood blister. This is a scary one. So it is responsible for it makes up about 10 to 15% of melanomas, but about 43% of deaths from melanoma. It's really threatening because it grows so quickly, and it grows outwards rather than downwards. So get this one looked at ASAP. It can go from a very treatable stage to a very deadly stage in a couple of months.
Wow.
So yeah, so you need to get on that. Most found in the head and the neck. Melanomas are most found in men on the torso, on your back, and in women most likely on the legs, but it again can appear anywhere.
Wow.
So get to know your skin, know what it looks like normally. So if it appears, you get something that appears that's a bit dodgy looking, you know to get that checked out as soon as possible. Now I might fly through this part here. We're just looking at all the places that you should be checking your skin. So your head, your torso, your arms, your feet, underneath your feet, and that it can appear anywhere. So if you want to get, if you notice something or you are high risk that you work outdoors and you think, oh, I should probably get my skin checked just to be on the safe side and maybe develop a surveillance plan, your GP is a great place to start. So you can go to a skin clinic if you want to, but a GP is someone who's going to be seeing you regularly. They know your medical history. They have a more, holistic or full look at your health and what your risk factors might be. So I would recommend they should be equipped to be able to handle any skin cancer queries that you have. If you're feeling they don't have the training you'd like them to have, then you can go to a more experienced GP, or they might refer you to a dermatologist, which is a skin specialist. But skin clinics generally are GPs anyway, who've done a little bit extra training. So yeah, that's my top tip for you. And then to recap our main messages: cover up when you're outdoors with your long sleeve, long pants, hats, sunglasses, shade, and then sunscreen for areas of the skin that you can't cover up. Try and avoid the highest UV if you can. Even in the car, you need to be thinking about UV, so maybe get some UV film for your car. Yeah, find some shade for your break times. You need to make sure that you're checking your skin, know what it looks like normally. So if something starts to change, or an existing spot starts to change, or a new spot appears, you get on that quick.
And if your partner or someone raises a question,
don't ignore that.
Listen.
Yes. And then if you notice anything, go to your GP to get that checked out. Nice and quick, smart, please. So I am based at SunSmart at Cancer Council Victoria. There are equivalents to me in most states and territories. We can provide that information to you guys, and you can people can follow up with their local person if they like. But just to let you know, SunSmart have an education program, UV safety training. So we can do anything from an hour-long PowerPoint presentation to a 10-minute stand-up chat, toolbox talk. So and we can come out on site for you. We have the app and widget. Please download it. Please spread it with your workers or with your family. We provide best practice support and policy. We have policy templates that we can provide you.
And we'll provide links when we send our newsletter. We'll include links in this because we like to be a bit of a, as we were talking about this earlier, we can provide to the hubs of truth.
Yes, please. And then we've lots of brochures and other resources that people can get from us, and Cancer Council products.
What's happening with this lady here? Has she sort of had a bit of a problem with her makeup?
Can you see a difference between the top photo and the bottom photo?
Just a couple, just a
few?
Yeah.
So she's got a lot more freckling on the bottom photo, and that is a machine that we have called the Skin Damage Viewer. And it's a nice little way of scaring people into thinking, oh, this actually, I have some damage to my skin that I can't see under normal light, but when I put my head into this device, it's showing up a lot more damage than I realized. So if you would like us to come to your workplace in Victoria with our Skin Damage Viewer, we can do that, and maybe, scare a few people into action and taking home that message from a personal point of view.
Wow.
Yeah. And we also have our cancer information and support service. So if anyone is concerned about anything that they've heard today, please give our cancer nurses a call, and we can support you with answering your questions.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for today, Caoimhe.
You're welcome.
And for those of you who don't know, thank you very much to our audience, everyone sort of listening in, some of the questions that shot through. This is our last webinar for 2019, and it's actually the last webinar which will be delivered out of the ARB as well, as over the coming weeks we're transferring to a new host, and we'll be kicking off at a new home in 2020. So to get up to date on that, I recommend registering for our newsletter, and you'll see what else is sort of coming up. Our newsletter will be going out on Friday, and we'll have a lot of the links and material and sort of centered around SunSmart, but also recognizing that the Christmas period's coming up and we want everyone to come back in 2020 and have a safe holiday break. So Thank you all very much for your support over the year. Thank you very much for those who've dialed in today. And thank you very much, Quiva.
Most welcome.
Oh, one last comment before we go.
Yeah.
Any closing comments at all? Any thoughts?
Oh, make sure you cover up.
Awesome.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. Thank you all.
Thank you.